My name is Sarah, and I am an account executive here at Northbeam. Today, I thought it would be really fun to kind of go through a little bit of background. What is Northbeam? How do we actually do what we do? And then hop into the platform in the second half of the call so I can actually show you a little bit of what it looks like that we do, the types of reports you can build, and all of the different optimizations that you can start to make using our tool. All that to be said, as I mentioned, I do like to kind of start with a short PowerPoint. I promise it won't be death by PowerPoint. We'll keep it short and sweet, but I do think that some background is important to understand how Northbeam actually does what it does, and why we exist in the first place. So I'll actually go ahead and share my screen now. Awesome. Here we have our short little deck that I'd like to go through. And I always personally like to set the scene by starting with the problem first, right? So why are people leveraging a solution like Northbeam? Starting with what Northbeam actually is. So we're an advanced marketing analytics tool. We help brands figure out how to make the most of their media spend. And the reason for that is actually because of this problem. So media buyers need to leverage marketing to hit their business goals. And unfortunately, third-party data has become increasingly unreliable. This is due to fun technical things like GDPR compliance issues, privacy laws, iOS updates, just to kind of name a few. Some things that we honestly care a little bit less about, but they are preventing us from seeing the things that we really do care about. So things like information on site visitors and conversion paths. And of course, useful and unbiased attribution models that can actually be used cross-channel. As I'm sure we all know, things like Facebook, Google, they sell you ads. And so of course they want you to think that their ads are performing super well, so you go back in and you buy more ads from them. Northbeam's actually just a data collector, which is why we're able to store and retain as much information as we do, or one of the many reasons. And we're not incentivized to tell you that any channels are working better than they're not, because again, we're not selling you anything. All we're doing is actually collecting that data on your behalf. All that to be said, how is Northbeam actually handling this problem? Well, we're going to chat through 3 different kind of categories that work in conjunction to make us a unique solution. So we'll talk about our first-party data collection, then our reliable user identification, and lastly, our machine learning powered attribution, all before we actually hop into the platform itself. So starting with this first-party data collection, you've heard me say it now a few times, but Northbeam is a true first-party tracker. And so in technical terms, what are we actually doing? Well, we're placing our pixel directly on the DNS as an I record. And what this allows us to do is actually sit asynchronously as the brand on the domain and collect from first click all the way through conversion with this really first-hand look. Not only are we actually placing that pixel directly on that DNS, but we're also integrating with all of your ad platforms as well. So as you can see here, we've called out a few of the major ones, things like Meta, Google, TikTok, YouTube, Pinterest, etc., just to kind of name a few. We have hundreds of pre-built integrations, and so this makes it super simple to actually integrate all of that as easy as one click. I will also add that if there's ever not a native integration on a channel that you're advertising for, it's actually not a problem for Northbeam either. We're able to get you set up with a server-to-server connection so that we can ensure that we're still pulling in anything that's relevant to your business so you really have this holistic understanding of what's actually going on. And then the last kind of thing that I like to call out here is just the fact that we're able to process all of this data in real time. Our standard offering is a 4 times a day refresh. All that means is your data refreshes every 6 hours, 4 times a day. It's super informative and gives you that real-time information that you need to make decisions quickly. However, we actually do offer a even more advanced processing, which is hourly processing. And so while it's even more informative, you can do a lot of things here like day trade your ads around the holidays if you'd like to do that. And so we do have the option for both of those too. Moving on, now that we've talked about all of this awesome first party data, what actually happens with it? And this is going to be a little bit of Northbeam's secret sauce. So we have an in-house built user identity graph. And what this is actually doing is taking thousands of unique identifiers on the back end. Things like geolocation, IP address, device ID, account being logged into, as well as time of day it's being accessed, just to kind of name a few of those thousands, and really helping make sense of all of that data and hence connecting the dots for you so you can really understand your customer journey. And so what's going on here is we're cleansing, stitching, and mapping all of this data together. To give you an example of this in real time, so it doesn't just sound like buzzwords, last year there was a very large duplication error that occurred within the conversions API in Facebook, which is called Facebook CAPI. At that time, a lot of people were using that as their source of truth, and what they were seeing was duplicate amounts of spend. No one knew what was going on, and they had to stop their spend because, hey, we didn't give Facebook permission to take all of our money and do who knows what with it. To our knowledge, Northbeam's actually the only solution that did not pull in these duplicate numbers. And so what this tells us is, to some extent, other solutions may still be relying on in-platform data to do their modeling. Whereas Northbeam, as a true first-party data collector, we didn't care what Facebook had to say. We collected our own numbers, and then our technology was able to cleanse, stitch, and map all of those data points together to make sure that what we were showing was accurate. And so in a fancy way, this cleansing, stitching, and mapping is really just double checking. Now that I've kind of given you an example of this in real time, let's talk about the next aspect of what makes us a unique solution, which is going to be our machine learning powered attribution models. So out of the box, you'll still get all of those attribution models that you're super used to. Things like linear, last click, first touch. However, we do have two proprietary models, and this is actually often where we see people living when they are utilizing the platform as well. Now, why might you want more attribution models, you may ask? Well, I'll tell you. Our two proprietary models, which are referred to as clicks only and clicks and views, do something that's quite unique. We're actually able to start to discredit bottom of the funnel touch points here and really actually start to show you what's driving the intent of that sale. So for example, say I were to see a Facebook ad, then an Instagram ad, a TikTok ad, I Google search, and I purchase. Well, something like Google Organic will take credit for that conversion very, very quickly, as we well know, considering they were the last touch point in that journey. Well, in actuality, I was just Google searching so I can get on the website and buy because I was planning to buy anyway. And so in those instances, when that Google search, for example, really isn't actually a part of that journey and rather is a bottom of the funnel touch point, we can discredit it altogether and give equal credit out to those touch points that actually drove me to Google search in the first place and ultimately buy. So in that example, that Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Now, clicks only is also what we refer to as our deterministic model. The reason for this is it's hard click data, and so we know for a fact that it happened. When it comes to clicks and views, this is inherently a little bit more probabilistic, as measuring impressions is a little bit more probabilistic. And so this is when our machine learning really starts to come into play. And our machine learning is actually able to start to model out anything that didn't result in a click and rather may have just resulted in an impression or a view. So this is particularly helpful for things like TikTok, YouTube, CTV, but really any touch points here that aren't actually driving that click and rather maybe just driving that view or impression. And so you can really start to understand the full impact of all of your different marketing touch points. At this point, I think that we would find the most value of actually hopping into the platform as well. I'm just flashing on the screen some of the brands that we work with already that have found success with our tool. And now I'm excited to show you what type of success you can find with our tool as well. So I'll go ahead and share my screen now to a different page, which is going to be the platform. Awesome. Now that we've loaded up here, What we're looking at here is our overview page. And so essentially the 10,000 foot view, what might be going on any given day, week, month. We do have the ability to customize the date range here. And so even if it's 5 years from when you've started Northbeam, you'll be able to see from that day one to that 5 year mark to really have this holistic understanding of your business as well. In our overview page, we're actually splitting up the view into two separate accounting modes. There's a reason for that as well. And so we'll chat through our cash snapshot, which is going to be probably the way that most of you are used to looking at things. Spend on this day of spend, revenue on the day of revenue, really when the business is realizing that revenue. And then we'll chat through our accrual performance, which is our second accounting mode. Now that we know when the money has hit the bank, this is going to be really helpful in understanding why and how it actually hit the bank. So to get a little bit more granular on both of these, starting with our cash snapshot. As I mentioned, this is where our model is attributing conversions to the day that they actually occurred. And so we can see fun things here like spend, media efficiency ratio, average order value, revenue, of course. Not to mention that all of these are also fully customizable. And so we really want to make sure that it's easy for you to see exactly what you care about. And so pretty much everywhere in Northbeam, we have options to kind of customize your view and dashboard as well. Over here, just to kind of go a little bit deeper on this cash accounting, I always like to show revenue as an example because who doesn't care about that? And so what we're looking at here is actually this client's revenue over the last week. When we actually scroll over these fun, colorful charts, we start to understand even more granular insights. So we can actually start to understand how long someone has been in the funnel for and what that conversion lag really looks like. So for example, we're scrolling over August 23rd here. What we can see is on August 23rd, $62,000 worth of revenue is being realized. Of that, $40,000 worth of that revenue is actually being attributed to entering the funnel only the day before that. So pretty quick turnaround time for this brand specifically. But on the flip side, what we can see that almost $10,000 worth of that revenue is actually being attributed to entering the funnel over 90 days ago. And so now this is something unique to Northbeam. As a true first-party data collector, we actually have an infinite look-back window. And so what that means is we're not actually, we can basically look back in an infinite amount of time. Whereas something like Facebook or Google is really kind of restricted to up to 90 days at most, but sometimes even modeling things off of the last 24 hours of data. And as we can kind of see here, that obviously doesn't give you a full understanding, especially for brands that have a longer consideration period, sometimes a higher AOV. It's important to understand the entirety of what's going on and not just the last 7, 60, 90 days. All that to be said, now that we've taken a look over here at that cash snapshot, we can scroll down to our accrual performance, which, as I mentioned, is actually going to help you understand how that money is really hitting the bank. And so here what we're able to do is attribute conversions on the days that those marketing events that actually drove that conversion to happen took place. So when we scroll back down here to attributed revenue, we can actually start to understand how all of those different marketing touch points are being split up on a day-to-day basis. So say I saw a Facebook ad on the 23rd, Instagram on the 25th, TikTok on the 27th, and ultimately purchased on the 29th. What we can actually see here is that that's going to be split up upon all of those different days and not just being attributed to that August 29th when I ultimately purchased. And so this is really helpful with that conversion lag now taken into account, understanding how those different marketing touch points are paying off on any given day. Now that we've kind of gone over this really high level view, we can start to get a little bit more granular. So I'm going to move us over here to our model comparison page. This is one of the many places that you can kind of compare and contrast what might be reported in something like Google Analytics versus what might be reported by Northbeam. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we do out of the box offer a lot of different attribution models that you can select from. For the sake of this example, I've actually selected attribution model 1 as linear, This is typically the way Google Analytics is modeling things out for you, equal credit throughout. And I've actually compared attribution model 2 being one of our proprietary models, which is that clicks only model. Again, just to reiterate, this is that hard click data that we know for a fact happened. And again, where we're able to discredit that bottom of the funnel touch point, given it's not actually a part of that journey. And so we can start to break this down on the platform level and understanding how those discrepancies are actually being reported. So for example, I like to make fun of Google Organic because they're infamous for over-attributing. We can take a look here. Over the last 28 days, this client is seeing close to $1.4 million worth of revenue that's being attributed towards Google Organic, according to something like Google Analytics. And in actuality, what Northbeam's reporting is it really should be closer to $500,000 worth of revenue rather than $1.4 million. And so that's a really large discrepancy. And so on your paid channels, this becomes really, really interesting to start to break down. So for example, if we were to click on Facebook ads, it would actually drop down all of our live campaigns here. It looks like I slammed my head on the keyboard because this is anonymized, but I can assure all of you that your proper naming conventions here would appear rather than the jumbled letters and numbers. And so now on this campaign level, we can actually start to understand those discrepancies as well. Since we're kind of comparing this to something like Google Analytics versus what Northbeam is seeing, of course, they would under-attribute something like Facebook, which is like their direct competitor. And so maybe we're curious, all right, why is Northbeam seeing such a discrepancy? Well, we can actually click into the campaign itself, and it'll redirect us to an entire page of only that campaign's performance. And so now we can really start to understand, okay, we see the discrepancies are being reported. Well, why are they being reported this way? And so we can see things here like spend, attributed revenue on any given attribution window that you've selected, lifetime attributed revenue, ROAS, lifetime ROAS, impressions, visits. I can go on, but essentially any metric you can think of, we'll be able to kind of show you it here. Scrolling down, it'll give you a bit more of an attractive view of what spend looks like over whatever time period you've selected here, as well as attributed revenue on that attribution window you've selected as well. Scrolling down will get us even more granular. And so naturally, as a data company, we want to make sure that we can show you all the data that possibly matters. And so you can even break this down further from the campaign level to the ad set or even ad level as well. And so we're able to kind of see all of those different metrics here that you would have selected that are important for you based on this ad set or ad level too. I also like to call out the fact that all of these reports are also exportable. And so we do have an open API where we can export directly to your data warehouse. You can even schedule those exports. And so that makes it super easy to have all of your data in one place, besides in Northbeam as well, if that's something that you're looking for. Now that we've finished looking at this granular view of a campaign, I'd like to redirect us to the next page. I'm bringing us now to the sales page. The sales page itself is something that I could spend probably an hour just talking about. So I do want to reiterate that I'll keep this very high level for today's sake. And of course, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly and we can kind of do a bit of a deeper dive. All that to be said, welcome to our sales page. Definitely meat and bones of the platform, where you can start to get really, really customizable. Make sure that what you're seeing is what matters to you. And so as you can actually see here, we can save as many different dashboard views as you'd like. So you can kind of create an infinite amount. Maybe your CMO cares about different metrics than maybe your media buyer. And so this is kind of the place where you're able to differentiate all of those things that matter to you. At the top here, you'll be able to select between attribution model, attribution window, and accounting mode, of course. We can even get more granular here by breaking this down by platform, category, creative test. Our team will help you set up custom breakdown labels so that you make sure that things are being grouped appropriately. For example, we'll click on platform here. After we click on platform, we can actually even add another breakdown if we want. So we can really start to get as granular as we'd like here. And we can even kind of move these around in order of importance too. Moving over here to our filters. If you thought this wasn't granular enough, well, we can get even more granular. And so here you can break this down here by different categories, by platform, targeting, country, creative tests. Essentially, whatever matters to you is the way that you'll be able to see the platform. And so I always like to call that out because that's what Northbeam is here for. We're here to help you with your efficiency to make smarter, data-driven decisions really quickly. All that to be said, we can even change the time granularity here. So we can look at it daily, we can look at it hourly, weekly, or even monthly. Not only that, we can actually compare time over time. So maybe we're curious to see this time, this last week, last year, how are we performing? And we can compare that. As well as maybe we want to see year over year metrics. And so we can compare that here too. We have a lot of different ways that we can actually look at all of these things. And so just to give you guys an example, I've selected spend as my main metric here, and I'd like to compare attributed revenue maybe to visits. And so now really quickly here, what we can understand is our spend peaked, then it kind of plateaued. But when it plateaued after that initial peak, our attributed revenue and our visits actually increased. And so this becomes super interesting to start to understand. We can also change this to get even more kind of clear and granular, depending on how you prefer to look at it with a bar graph. But again, I could spend so much time just on this page alone. So to move things along, let's scroll down here. And so here's where we can actually start to customize all of our different metrics in our table view. As I mentioned earlier, this is all anonymized, which is why it looks a little funky. What you'd actually be able to see here is all of your different platforms as well as an icon for that platform. So what we can call this here is Facebook, for example. From here, we can actually continue to drill into that more granular level, things like campaign, ad set, and ad. So just for an example, we'll click into this platform that we can pretend is Facebook. It'll now actually drill down to that campaign level. And now on that campaign level, we can really start to understand what's working and what's not. Another thing that we can kind of do here is start to sort it by ascending or descending. You can even filter to make sure that you're really seeing what you'd like. And you can actually also save all of those different table views as well. And so just to give you an idea of all the different metrics that we do have to offer, we have all these Northbeam reported metrics. We can even do short-term forecasting, so 30 and 60, 90 days out. We have lifetime value metrics, subscription metrics if relevant to the business model, and then directly in platform, we can actually pool all Facebook reported, including Meta Shops, TikTok, Google, and Snapchat. And so this just makes it super easy to have one place to be able to compare and contrast everything, since we're already integrated. All that to be said, there's a lot to kind of cover here. And so again, if we wanted to go a little bit more deep into this, I'll include my email at the very end of this as well. So anybody that's interested can kind of reach out for a bit more of a deeper dive. But I'd like to move us over here for a second to our creative analytics next. This is another feature that really could have a webinar of its own. But to keep it short and sweet, we're actually integrating here with Facebook, Snapchat, and TikTok. And we're able to show you in this really nice visual dashboard ad performance. And so at a quick glance, you can really start to understand really quickly in this data-driven way what's working and what's not. So we can select up to 4 metrics here at a time, whatever really makes the most sense for you and the team. You can select a key metric being ROAS or CAC, and then, of course, start to see, based on those metrics you've selected, how are these ads really performing? And so we can see what Northbeam's reporting across that benchmark versus what Facebook's recording across that benchmark. How much have we spent? What does attributed revenue look like? And we have this really lovely heat map to actually show you what performance looks like in relation to all other ads that you're running at the same time. Naturally, as a data company, we love a good chart view. And so we have that here too, which makes it super easy based on those metrics you've selected to kind of see on a day-to-day basis what's working, how it's working, and if it's not. This is really helpful, as you know, creatives are something that people are changing really often. And so it's important to know what's working and what's not so that you can make sure that you're scaling efficiently as well. I'll move us over here next to our orders page. This is one of the places that you can actually see on an individualized level every single order that's come in. And so this becomes really interesting as you're on Northbeam because you can start to break this down and really start to understand how customers are performing with all of your different campaigns. We can break this down by new versus returning customers, specific subscription tags, if they used a specific discount code. And so this becomes really interesting to start to understand. Something else that we can do is actually drill into this on the individualized level. So if I were to click on any one of these order IDs, it would actually redirect us to a page that looks like this. And now we know exactly who that person is that purchased, where they purchased from, what exactly they purchased. And the fun but slightly creepy part is actually seeing from that point that they entered the funnel all the way through that point of conversion, every interaction that they actually had before they ultimately purchased. This client specifically has been on Northbeam for quite some time, which is why we can drill back all the way to 2020 to show you all of these different touch points that this specific person took before they actually purchased. And so this really starts to help you understand what those customer journeys look like and ultimately which touch points are actually converting as well. The last kind of thing that I'll want to finish up with here is going to be our lifetime value page. So this is one of the many places you can start to kind of further understand your cohort analysis. We can break this down for you by month, week, country, region, even product and variant, as well as just product and discount code. And so this is just one of the many places, since we already have all of this data for you, where we're doing a little bit of the legwork for you as well and calculating this. So just to kind of give you an idea of what that looks like, I'll select first order by discount code. And it's going to build a report for us based on all of those discount codes, how many people use that as their first time purchase, and ultimately, how did their lifetime value increase over time as well. And so just to kind of give you an idea here, all of these different customers, they use these specific discount codes at the first glance, and over time, this is essentially how their lifetime value increased. We can do different things here, like break it down by customer value with refunds, even orders per customer and percent of reordering. So this is kind of a great place to have this aggregated view and really understanding your customers. All that to be said, I know we've gone through a lot today and it's really exciting stuff, but I could keep talking about it for hours. And so I will take a pause here and stop sharing my screen and just kind of come back to it. There's a lot to see in the platform. It's really robust. And so we do always like to keep it high level on these short conversations. But of course, I always love to nerd it out and answer any questions that anybody may have. And so I would love to refer to the notes section and see if anybody has asked any questions. Let's see. Okay, it doesn't look like it. So what I'll actually do is I'll send through my email in the chat afterwards. And what you guys can do is reach out to me directly if you had any questions on today's call, or you'd really be interested in kind of a deeper dive. What can Northbeam do to help your problem specifically with attribution? Always happy to schedule some time out and do that as well. My email is Sarah, SARAH, @northbeam.io. But again, I will throw that in the chat as well. I really appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you so much for hopping on, and I hope to see you soon.